Hello and welcome to Season 3 of Family Twist, a podcast about DNA surprises, found family, and amazing adoption stories. I'm Kendall Austin Stulse, and my partner is Corey Stulse. We've had fabulous guests during Seasons 1 and 2.
We're sharing stories of people who identify as NPEs, also called not parent expected, others who found out they were donor conceived and have surprise siblings, and even others with unique family twists. We started this podcast to spotlight Kendall's adoption story and his discovering both sides of his biological family in 2017. So if you're just finding the podcast, we encourage you to start with episode 1 to learn more about Kendall's journey.
Thank you for listening.
Well, thanks for joining us again on Family Twist. Our guest this episode is Rick DellaRatta, an acclaimed musician and the creator of Jazz for Peace. Welcome, Rick.
Thank you so much. Pleasure.
So we're excited that you're here because something that we bonded on very, very early in our relationship is music. We're big music lovers. Kendall absolutely adores the piano. I think some of his favorite musicians are pianists.
Absolutely. There is music in our house playing almost 24/7, and my favorite jazz pianist of all time is Oscar Peterson. And we just have a dedicated digital station that just is constantly playing his music in our kitchen.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
We'll go through little phases because, like, for a long time it was a Marion McPartland.
Yes, with that show she had, right?
Yep.
The piano jazz show.
Yes.
I mean, so many wonderful episodes of that. There really are.
She grabbed me early on.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So, Rick, I know you have some really cool family stories to share with us, but first, because we are all music lovers here, let's talk a little bit about where your passion for music came from.
Sure. Well, I kind of came from a musical family. And then as I got into my heritage, I learned that it went way back. So, sometimes, we don't really know. Some people say, well, there is something to that because there's been musicians who become like great players and their father was a great musician. There's actually in the other building where I live, I have a friend, she's a singer. She had a child with a bass player that I also knew. They separated completely and never saw the kid. The kid never saw his father. And now all of a sudden, this kid just decided on his own to pick up the exact instrument that his father plays. And he's becoming, so in other words, it's like, and it also happened with, since you know jazz a little bit, there's a saxophone player named Dewey Redman who played with the great pianist Keith Jarrett, who, when I do something for you today, there's a little bit of a Keith Jarrett influence in that I'm going to do something that's free improvisation, free form, what Keith Jarrett is known for. And Keith Jarrett had a saxophone player named Dewey Redman. Dewey Redman had a child. The child never met. They never really knew each other growing up, etc. They were raised by the mother. He had all of his struggles with, being a struggling jazz artist. Had issues with, substance, all kinds of issues that jazz musicians have. And his son just grew up to be this incredible saxophone player, who was, literally carrying his torch forward. So that's an interesting thing that maybe it comes from that. If that's possible, then there could be a lineage for me as well, because I was told that I go back a long ways, going at least back to Italy with my grandfather, who was a great musician and a great accordion player. And he came over here with nothing but a wine press and an accordion, which were really the two most important things you could smuggle into the United States at that time.
Sure, absolutely.
That was better than currency,
Right.
Yes.
So he came over here with that ability, and he became quite an attraction during the bootleg era. So it's funny because, when I was at his funeral, someone took me to his side and said, your grandfather, they used to pick him up in a Bentley, and behind the Bentley was a giant cylinder with all the bootleg whiskey and drive him out to these places. And they said, even when, you know, the big names like Al Capone would come, they would always request your grandfather. You know, they
Wow.
had to have him play the music and all that stuff. So it goes back to Italy. And then as I became known in jazz, I started to hear from family members in Italy that I never knew existed, never knew who they were. And they were in the city in Italy called Caserta. And one of them came over. Actually, a few of them came over. But the first one that came over is the one who, you know, told me that we don't even really come from Italy. And that's weird because I kept having people introduce me as like they would say I was a Spaniard. And they kept
Hmm.
saying Spain, Spain. I'm like, where are you guys getting this stuff? I don't, you know, do I look Spanish? Maybe I play a little Spanish, but they kept doing it over and over again. And I was like, what are you going to do? You know, people want to think I'm Spanish. But then this woman comes and she said that we were originally aristocrats in Spain and we
Hmm.
were overthrown. It was an
Oh, whoa.
overthrow. And in those days, when you get overthrown, like back in them days, the 1500s, whatever it was, you don't run for office 4 years later. You know what I mean? You got to get the heck out of Dodge. You know,
Right.
you're
Yeah.
going to get
Right.
decapitated. You're offended. You know,
Yep.
you got to get out. So they got, you know, they got their jewels or whatever, all their stuff, and they took off for Italy and they went and just bought this town. They just started the town of Caserta. So everyone with the name DellaRatta is out of this city called Caserta. And they said, as soon as you get yourself over there, there's going to be a big party for you. So, you know, whenever I play in Italy again, I haven't played since this happened, but I've been to Italy 3 times, but not since this. But yeah, I guess there's a little shindig waiting for me.
That's
Oh,
cool.
awesome. Yeah. You should definitely start making some travel plans. That sounds like an exciting
I
trip.
should. There's another one named Aldo, and he is back and forth with me, just texting me, sends me little tidbits now and then. Speaks no English, so I have to, I have to go into Google Translate and whatever. But he also feeds me little things here and there from the old days,
Wow.
the old
That's
country.
That's very cool. Yeah. Well, you know, nature versus nurture is one of our big themes on this podcast. And I mean, I think we've seen from both sides, you know, proof that it does exist. I mean, Kendall definitely has some traits with the siblings that he, you know, didn't grow up with. So it wouldn't be like an automatic thing, but then also, you know, raised by adoptive parents that he, you know, inherited a lot of their personality and morals and things like that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. So when you found them, you realized that you had adopted them just by, you know, you being your DNA, just by sharing the
Yeah.
DNA, you had all these traits. That's so fascinating.
It is interesting because people will watch my brother and me together and you can notice. I've seen videos of us together and it's like, wow, you know, we have some similar mannerisms and that sort of thing. So it's really interesting. But
Yeah, that is fascinating.
yeah.
So, Rick, can you share with us a little bit about making something beautiful out of tragedy, which is your project, J.A.S.S for Peace, just kind of the origin and
Sure,
highlights?
absolutely. Yeah. Well, you know, it's this one story. I'm kind of a one-hit wonder with this story, you know, by accident. You know, and that is it's a strange way that life works. On the 10th of September, you know, September 10th, 2001, you know, the day before
Before.
everything changed forever. I was someone was a photographer was taking pictures of me for her own, you know, purposes, and then she was giving me the negatives for free. Something that photographers do in New York City, and mostly in New York City, people know about this. I don't know if they know about it wherever else, but sometimes photographers get very well known. Linda McCartney is one simply by walking around in a place like New York City, you know, you know, Washington Square Park and taking pictures of people like Bob Dylan and, you know, Jimi Hendrix when nobody knew who they were, when they're just strumming along in a park, you know, and then she's got those photos. Well, this woman was, you know, wanted to take pictures of me. And I was fine because we're always, you know, the free pictures. We're like, hey, that's fine. That works
That's
for, you know,
right.
it's a win-win, you know? So she's a nice girl. She's taking pictures of me. No biggie. We're doing our thing. We're having a great time. Wonderful afternoon. the next morning I get a call from her. And, I kind of vaguely remember, but little did I know, it really resonated then. She, to support her photography habit, she had a job on Wall Street. So she's
Mm.
down there, and her her boss's son worked in one of the World Trade Center
Mm.
buildings. So apparently, she's in the middle of all this. The boss's son calls her, "Hey, can I speak to my dad?" He's a little wound up. She gives to her boss. They talk, and she's there hearing it. And finally, he's like, "Well, son, maybe just for precaution, you should get the hell out of there, whatever." And she's like, just sitting there, like, really just up and up. She doesn't know who to call, and she just spontaneously calls me.
Hmm.
It wakes me up. I'm sleeping. And
Hmm.
I'm like, "Hey," and then I'm hearing this, and I'm like, listen, I'll tell you what, listen, I'm on the fifth floor. I'm in the Lower East Side. I'm on the fifth
Mhm.
floor of a 5-floor building, 5-floor walk up. And my roof is just, boink, go on my roof. Like,
Right.
it's almost like it's almost like my own private terrace, the
Right.
roof. Cause I'm so close to the roof. I just go on the roof. Let me go up and just take a look. Something flew into there. You're never thinking anything that it's just
No.
probably some idiot with, so I mean, even it's unheard of even to think of, how could you even get in
Right.
the airspace? But we're not thinking that. I'm just thinking some imbecile flies his stupid little glider. I mean, what a crazy thing. Anyway, go up there and forget it. It's all,
Really, what
I'm
happened?
seeing, well, it's like it's like walking out of your seat in the, into the screen. You know what I mean? Because now I'm part of the movie. I mean, I'm
Mhm.
less than a quarter of a mile away on the roof of a building watching something completely
Mm.
transformational, something that no one's prepared for, the whole thing. And so, there's really nothing, there's no response for me. Like at the end of this, I just had a piece of paper with some words on it, because that's what my response was, words that came out of me on a piece of paper. And I called the poem Jazz for Peace. So, very simply, all I did was I looked at those words. I'm like, wow, these are some pretty powerful words I wrote today. Um, and then I thought, um, I mean, I've traveled a ways in this journey now. I've been a musician. I traveled all over the world. I had seen things that I was convinced were true about the magic of music, the ability for, people like Oscar Peterson to resonate with people of all shapes and sizes and color and creed and religion and language. Every barrier that divides us, music breaks through.
Mhm.
And the art form
Yes.
of jazz is our country's greatest music. And here I am, a jazz musician. And, I've been in situations where I was, on stage with Israelis and Palestinians, that come here to learn jazz, and I'm playing with them. And I'm like, I'm noticing there's no war on the stage here. Nobody's, these two people are getting along just very well. So I'm noticing, the healing power, all of the powers that music has and jazz has in particular, and the poem's called Jazz for Peace. So, basically, I was thinking, rather than just write it down, walk the walk, why don't I just talk the talk, is what I meant to say. Why don't I try to live up to these words, basically? And that's what I've been doing since that morning. I've been trying to live up to the words that I scribbled out on a piece of paper, watching the events of 9/11. And
Mm.
so that's just led from one thing to another, to another, to another. And you know what? It's like, it just presents itself. My journey presented itself to me every little step. You know what I mean? Because, the next step in that journey with the poem was, the country was closed down. When it opened up, I had to appear as a headliner at a jazz festival in Savannah, Georgia. There was going to be 8,500 people, you know? So here I am with these words of a poem, and everybody's, affected by this whole thing. I mean, this is the first event where anyone's even been able to get on a plane and go to since then. So, here I am with the words of a poem. I mean, I'm in a position that poor Edgar Allan Poe would have, given his right, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Given his eye tooth for,
Yep.
I mean, a great poem. I'm not a, I'm a lyricist. I'm not a poem. I'm not a poet, but I have a poem,
Right.
Right. So I read
Right.
the poem, 8,500 people. You can imagine how that resonated. And then when I got back up here, I had another high profile concert where the promoters said, "Hey, we heard about this poem. What the heck? I mean, people are talking about this thing. Well, is there any chance you're going to have it to music by the time of our, and now
Mm.
they're like, hint, hint, kind of, I'm
Right.
like, not a bad idea. So I put it to music for that. Then, articles come out. There was a preview that came out where the person asked me to recite the Jazz for Peace poem. And just in the banter back and forth, I just happened to say to him something that I had noticed in all my travels, all of my life, my journey that led me to this point, which was that if we fill our souls up with these amazing qualities that the art form of jazz has, and that, great music in general has, such as creativity, artistry, humanity, intelligence. If we fill our souls up with these great qualities, we will have a better chance at avoiding the behavior that leads to destruction. Just some off the top of my head, I wouldn't have even remembered it. I would have remembered it and be if it hadn't have come out in the article. Then when it came out of the article, I hardly remembered it. It's just
Right.
that it was lifted, and now if you Google Rick DellaRatta famous quote, that thing's all over the place. I mean, you can't cancel me. You can't, I don't think you could uncancel culturable, probably. You know what I mean? Because where are you going to go? How are you going to get it out? How are you going to go to that,
Yeah.
Russian website or that, Hindu website where it's in Hindu? I mean, it's in languages. It's crazy. But I didn't know they had famous quote websites, which I think are phenomenal. I mean, if you ever want to just treat yourself, just click on one of those famous quotes, type my quote in and go to whatever the first website you see and just read some of them. There's all these great people saying these inspirational things. I mean, you just can't go wrong. So I learned a lot just reading the other people's quotes, because I was so amazed to even be in that company. But anyway, so, that happens. The press comes out, DellaRatta starts concert with Jazz for Peace, and it's like, oh man, they just said that. Now what am I gonna, now what,
Right.
So then, I kind of was, I managed like, people are really talking about this Jazz for Peace thing of yours. I said, listen, I have an idea. Why don't you, as you're doing what you do, why don't you contact the United Nations, And I mean, you can imagine the look I'm probably getting from her just with this idea, right? She's like, and I do get these looks from people, but I realized if someone doesn't look at you crazy, you're probably not even on the right track to begin with, because everything sounds crazy at the beginning. I said, listen, call over there. Well, what number do I call? I don't know. You got to dial them in. When you get a break in the action, call the main number and just see where they put you through. They're probably going to bounce you all over the place. Who the heck knows what they're going to do? You're probably going to end up in the main office in Scottsdale, Arizona. Who knows where they're going to send you, But just follow it along and see what happens. And one day, she's just going over some things with me, some itinerary, like, hey, you got this thing in Paris, then you're going to get on the Eurorail to Milan, then you're going to go. You have to get to this country with more cows than people, Luxembourg. Freaking place has more cows than people. That's what I noticed. Anyway, we got to go Luxembourg. This little jazz club in Luxembourg wants you there. So then she's like, oh, and by the way, that United Nations thing, yeah, they want to do that.
Wow.
And I'm like, did you realize what you just said? Obviously you didn't. She doesn't. Nobody really did. I'm the one who realized it. To me, I'm like, this is a big deal for me. I just thought it's a big deal for me.
Yeah.
But she couldn't really tell the difference, I don't think, between the Luxembourg and the, so I don't think she could tell one from the other. And even the musicians, they're just like, oh, Rick has a gig. And then we're going to, they just want the particulars,
Right.
It starts here. We got to get this time to go through the checkpoint. That's where everyone's just doing their thing. But for me, I thought the fact that I was bringing Israeli, Palestinian, and American musicians together was going to resonate. Well, it sure didn't right when it happened. Do you know what I mean? I mean, we put out a press release, nobody's really, the people at the United Nations, they were impressed, but they were there anyway.
Right.
And one of the guys came up to me, said, just, what you're doing is just, and he got it, I said, listen, I see that you get it, but you got to realize we sent, I don't see anybody. I don't see Walter Cronkite here or whatever. I'm sure he was retired, but you know what I mean? I don't
Hmm.
see whoever I don't see those guys here. He said, listen, see that, you see that bleacher over there? I said, yeah. He said, if a bomb blew up in that beach bleacher, you get all the publicity that you want,
Mm.
which is so sad, right? It would
Right.
take something like that. But the guy was right. I mean, he was telling
Yeah.
me, but he was really not. Anyway,
Mm.
did that. As time went on, people started writing me letters referencing that event, And like I said, it's just gone on and on and on to now where, like I said, I don't think I don't expect to be on a podcast and someone doesn't want to hear that story.
Yeah.
So
Sure, of
I
course.
don't blame you for asking.
Right. Right.
Well, I think we'd both love to hear a little taste of
Okay.
music.
Well, now, so what I'm going to do, this is going to be interesting because this might, I think Corey, it's going to be more along the Kendall side because Corey has this ear already for hearing jazz because he's got a thing. So what I do is I'm trying to get people that don't even know jazz to follow me on a little bit of a jazz journey. So I start out with something that's that anybody can, you know what I mean? No one's going to screw up following me on that. And then I head into something that I call free JA. And I got to this title in the craziest way. I was in Haiti doing a concert in Haiti and had a big sign, and the sign said, "Welcome, Jazz for Peace, J.A.S.S." It's like, what? And then I called a friend of mine who had spelled it with that. He had a traditional New Orleans band and he was very traditional, real stickler. He wanted everything perfect, just like historically perfect, this guy. Only person I knew. I said, you just remember you had that New Orleans jazz? Yes, the New Orleans, the Bourbon Street Jazz Band. And I said, it was a great band. Yeah, it was a great band. You spell the J.A.S.S. I says, yeah, I was just got back from Haiti. He said, well, that is the correct spelling of jazz.
Hmm.
It's a Creole word, comes from Haitian people. And apparently, they brought Haitian people from Ghana. They kept, started out in Ghana in the slave castles, came to Haiti, then from Haiti to New Orleans. And then they were hearing jazz when it was developing and they called it J.A.S.S. We changed it. So I took the Z's off because it was misspelled. I kept the S's off because nobody knows that. Now I have free J.A., which stands for something that Jazz for Peace thinks is very important. And that is, the bombing of innocent civilians in wartime. And we keep, we have to let reporters do their job, journalism integrity, freedom of speech, and these issues surrounding Julian Assange. So hence my title, Free JA. So anyway, I'm going to start out with a Beatles song, The Long and Winding Road, and then we're going to wind into this thing somewhat influenced by people like Keith Jarrett, Cecil Taylor, that would literally improvise their whole concert. And I'm going to make this up. I mean, who knows? Like this could be the belly flapper. We don't even know what's going to happen, but we'll see. The long and winding road that leads to your door will never disappear. Seen that road before. It always leads me here. Lead me to your door. Many times I've been alone. Many times I've cried. Anyway, you'll never know. Many ways I've tried. Still they lead me back to the long winding road.
time ago. Don't leave me waiting here. Lead me to your door.
Very
All
good.
right, yeah.
Yay.
Giving you the steps here. The steps.
No, I love that. That was really great.
Thank you for that.
Yeah,
Ray, my pleasure.
especially the rendition of the first song and then the
Yeah, it
lead
was-
into the second. I
great.
loved it. Yeah.
Good. I mean, like I said, once I got through that melody, it was, it was all just, whatever's in the air.
Right, right.
I do not have that ability, so I can appreciate it a lot.
Well, we would love to hear the story about finding someone that you didn't know existed and bringing them into the story.
Okay. Yes. That's the one I was, let me see if I can get this back here. Okay. All right. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yep. Oh, perfect.
So now, now the DNA thing comes out. So these are all, just because of my jazz journey, I was able to connect with these people, in Italy, which was so phenomenal. And I was in Washington, D.C. once, and a guy comes up, gives me his card. It says Joe DellaRatta, and I was like, wow, I didn't know. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. And he had somehow, so I was finding them out only through jazz before the GNA. In fact, one time I had a gig in West Palm Beach. I had a concert and I went to check into a place and they looked at my ID and they're like looking at me funny. And I'm like, what's going on here? Like, and they take it in the back room and they talk to each other and they come back and they give me the ID with this funniest look, and I get to my room and I get a phone call. Hey, and it turned out this guy, Joe DellaRatta, who met me in Washington, D.C., owned that hotel.
Oh my gosh.
And
Wow.
and he said, what are you doing down here? What's going on? I says, I'm just, I have a Jazz for Peace thing to help an outstanding cause. I'll send the car over. We canceled your thing, and I'm sending the car over to meet you. We're gonna take you to dinner at the such and such and all that stuff. So you know,
Wow.
it was an amazing
Huh.
situation. But now that was my only way. So now the DNA thing comes out, as you guys, have alluded to on all of the podcasts and the amazing stories of some of the other ones I listened to on the show. So, and I'm in the same boat with this DNA, and I'm like, because our family, who knows what's going to turn up? And sure enough, one day, I get really, I'm contacted by my cousin, and my cousin said, "Hey, I've been talking to this guy. He's a lawyer on Central Park West, and I think you really need to talk to this guy. If there's something going on, blah blah blah." I said, "All right, have him call me." So this guy calls me. He's a lawyer. He's a partner in a major law firm here in New York City, well known. Well known. Everybody knows this law firm, and he's one of the partners. And he starts talking to me and asking me questions. And I'm saying, "Hey, what's going on?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "I love music. And, your cousin told me blah, blah, blah." And I said, "That's great. I'm glad to hear that. What's going on here?" And he said, "Well, he had purchased one of those things. It could have been Ancestry. I mean, that's the most famous one, but I know there's like 3 or 4 of them that do it.
Right.
Yes.
And he purchased one for, I believe, his mother, or it's a parental related thing. One of his parents, and he had, yeah. His thing was, this going to be a little hobby. We're gonna have a little fun with his elderly parents, and go back in our genealogy and just trace it to Scotland and some king in Scotland and who knows and all that. And he's just thinking it's going to be the most fun thing, and then the tests come back, and all of a sudden, and I think, anyway, and I think he was doing it with his mother, and the tests come back, and he's got nothing on his father's side, and everything's
Mm.
working out great with the mom. Everything he wanted, it's all, everything that beautiful, everything's working out just as he had planned. The father's getting a 0.
Mm.
And then what he is getting is being traced in a very strange way, and he doesn't understand. He's very confused, and he's able to, call. He ends up somehow finding a way to reach my cousin, and then he talks to me, and I said, "Listen, what's the deal?" And she said, and then somehow through all the 3 of us, we end up, the whole story leads to a beauty parlor
Hmm.
in Schenectady, New York, where his mother apparently lived for a short amount of time, and she would go to this beauty parlor to get her hair done. While they were together, I think they may have been married at the time and everything,
Hmm.
but she went to the beauty parlor and she came out with a baby.
Mm.
So, and once he told me, once they got to the beauty parlor, I said, "Well, forget. There's no doubt," because we all knew my uncle Pete, and my uncle Pete he was, he comes from the musical lineage, and my grandfather, I think, was so proud of me because my uncle Pete was his protege, the oldest
Yeah.
boy. He was the oldest son, and he just wanted my uncle Pete to carry on his musical torch. And my uncle Pete was, just too much of a playboy rock star, whatever, to practice the freaking accordion.
Mhm.
And, he ends up like kind of like Warren Beatty in Shampoo with all of
Mm.
these, beauty parlors. And of course, when you got beauty parlors, you got girls. And if you're, a player like he was, and the problem was, he ended up in a crazy situation with one of these beauties that he ended up
Mm.
in a wild affair. And apparently they were all over the world chasing each other. It was a dysfunctional relationship. How these couples, the Richard Burton, Liz Taylor type of
Yeah.
scenario. You know what I mean?
Right.
They're
Yeah.
in the middle of they're throwing champagne glasses at each other in the middle of Greece, some island in Greece, some crazy thing. And he was kind of destroyed him, and he ended up,
Mm.
having an alcohol problem and losing all, because, these people, they get in these crazy relationships. They don't care even about their business anymore. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
one of those guys lost everything. He had everything and he lost it over some crazy woman. But that
Mm.
was, he lived and died by the sword. You know what I
Mm.
mean? And this woman was was someone he had an affair with. And, my father ended up telling me that, hey, in those days, when the baby didn't come out looking, you just You just raised it. You didn't go in asking questions because it could bring shame to the family.
Sure.
In those days, divorce was not, you know, the church, there were issues with the church. There were all kinds of issues with it, getting a divorce. So, and acknowledging out of wedlock children, you just raised it. No, you
Hmm.
just dealt with it. You know what I mean? You know, you pretended you saw something, you
Right.
pretended it looked like you, is what I
Right.
guess they did in those days. So I said, well, listen, welcome to the family. Why don't you come up because we're having this kind of thing. Memorial, my mother had passed away. Come up and meet everybody. He took, came over, give me a ride up, and, basically just welcomed him and introduced him to
Wow.
everybody. And, hey, cuz, you're one of us now.
Wow. That's amazing.
Nice. That's great.
How long ago was that?
That was about 4 or 5 years ago. 4 or 5 years ago. So I
Cool.
think it was about 4 years ago.
Hmm.
It was about 4 years ago.
Very good.
Did he have some challenges? I mean, what did his parents say about this
Well,
discovery?
yeah, I think it's possible that one of the parents may have passed away. So his dad may have passed away. And he was doing this with his mom. I can't really remember. And he didn't really talk to me much about whether it caused a rift or an issue internally. But he did tell me that, he knows in his heart that his father is his father because he was raised. He said he had a fantastic upbringing. And I told him, I said, listen, if you had a great mother and father, that's all any child could ask for. It's a great
Mhm.
a lot of biological parents are a disaster. We've heard about them, the narcissistic, parents and all this crazy stuff. And it's just horrific. And so many children have broken households. They don't have parents, or they have parents that are, dysfunctional and
Mhm.
all that crazy stuff. He had a wonderful upbringing. He had great parents. It just, it just wasn't a biological
Right.
situation with the father. And I don't even know if the father knew or not. I mean, I didn't
Yeah.
really get I don't recall getting that deep into it with him. Maybe the next time we get together, I'll be able to get into that. Mostly because he wanted to know about his real father.
Sure.
So
Yes.
most of it was him, and I was just trying to just do all I could for him, just tell him everything I remembered because he was my favorite uncle. He was kind of a black sheep of the family because of his issues. He
Mm.
went overboard and, what I mean? He had the drinking issues and the problems and all that. But he was, the most incredible uncle. I mean, as an
Hmm.
uncle, I just thought the guy was just that, just to have somebody, I always genuinely felt like he was always on my side and always wanted what was best for me. And you
Mm.
can't ask for more than that from an uncle.
Nope. That's right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wow. Well, kudos to you for, welcoming your cousin to the family and, making him feel welcome. And that's very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm so excited about this podcast because he's going to love it.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
his name is
Awesome.
Rob, and he's a phenomenal person, in addition to be a superstar lawyer, but
Cool.
he loves music. He's
Yeah.
classy and, he's going to really enjoy your podcast in general. I bet he becomes a fan of your should be
Good.
one of your
Awesome.
subscribers.
That would be
Yeah.
great.
Thank you.
Well, wow, Rick, you're a great storyteller. So thank you for, for sharing with us today. It was great. And of course, the Beatles stuff leading into the freestyle. Very cool. Very cool. Well, we're not too far from New York, so we're gonna definitely look up and we're gonna come and catch one of your gigs for sure.
Hmm.
Okay, great. Where are
We
you
live up.
guys?
We live up in New England. We live in the seacoast area of New Hampshire, so about
Oh,
80 miles north of Boston.
okay.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
nice up there. Isn't that called the North Shore or something? Or no?
We're north of the
south?
North Shore,
Okay, gotcha.
but yeah, we're
Okay.
we're about 20 minutes to the little tiny portion of the ocean that New England or New Hampshire touches.
Great, because I
So
used to go to school in Boston and, I
yeah,
would play gigs up there and, we do the quail hogging, whatever they call it with the clams and all
yep,
that. And it was fun. It was a
yeah,
blast, fishing and hunting for clams. The little neck clams were up there and all
yep,
that
Mhm.
stuff. Yeah, it was
Oh
yep.
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, we moved here from San Francisco after we found that my biological father and two of my half siblings live near here. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, so we were just not on a whim, but very quickly made the decision after visiting here in October 2018. Corey looked over at me on the plane ride back home to San Francisco and said, "We have to move there." Like because I'd missed so many years with them, and it's been great. We moved in January of 2019, and have been
That's
here
so
ever since.
cool. I think it's great for someone that is able to get a taste of both coasts, because they
Yeah,
both have their charms.
for
But a
sure.
lot of times the Western people never get out here. You never make it. So I'm glad you did.
It's
Yes,
true. It's true.
absolutely. Yeah, I think we've said that. Yeah, we enjoy the coastal living. It's for
Yeah.
us for sure.
Yeah, yeah. We were both landlocked in the middle for a long time, and so it was good to move to the West and then move out here. It's been kind of a whirlwind, but it's been great.
Oh,
So
it's nice.
Well,
thank
thank you
you.
for doing what you do. The Jazz for Peace program will continue on strongly, we hope. And yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you so much. Our benefit concert series is probably the biggest thing of what we do. And that helps outstanding causes in need all over the country, all over the world. So, if you come across an outstanding cause, a charity, because what we do is we help them in so many ways. Funds is one of the ways, but we also help them by expanding the donor base. We thank and reward the supporters they have, making them VIP guests of honor at the event. We help them get sponsors at the local level and then publicity and awareness. And then once we have all those things together, we go after major sponsors for them. We get new and prestigious supporters, and we help them with fundraising techniques that we've learned from the 20 years we've been doing it and the over 850 events along the way. So if you come across an outstanding cause, an outstanding charity, someone making your community better, the state of New Hampshire better, or our world better, please share this podcast. And then you can just
Absolutely.
tell them, all you got to do is share the podcast, say, hey, watch the podcast. All you got to do from there is contact us at info@jazzforpeace.org. Now, they're welcome to go to our website too and, research some other stuff. And the more they know, the better. But
Absolutely.
hopefully they've learned enough from this podcast where they can just now contact us. Again, it's info@jazzforpeace.org, just our generic email address. Write us a note. And that little note that they write is the seedling of an empowerment tree that we will then take that seedling, grow into roots, grow into branches. And at the end of the day, it's a helpful step forward for their outstanding cause. It makes me rich inside knowing that I've made a difference for an outstanding cause that is going to help others. So I'm helping those who are helping others.
Thank you so much for listening to Family Twist. We feature original music by Cosmic Afterthoughts. And Family Twist is presented by Savoir Faire Marketing Communications. Check out our website at familytwistpodcast.com for blog posts and all of our episodes.